I'm Psychologist Dr. Bryan, and in this week's Sinner in a Movie, I'll be sitting down with Mike Ciaccio. He's my former roommate, Catholic therapist, and director and founder of the Center for Healing. We'll be discussing his choice, the Covenant. This is the Catholic Center Show. All right, let's talk about the Covenant.
Sweet.
You changed your mind.
I did.
You were first going to have me watch Reign Over Me, and then last minute you threw a Chicago Cubs curveball at me and said, "Nope, I want to watch the Covenant." And you mentioned that you've been really into war films, and this is reflective of a midlife crisis for you. What's wrong, buddy?
I just hit 40. I hit 40 in March.
Okay.
I hit 40 in March. I have 13-year-olds now. I almost have 21-year-olds, my step boys. Do you see this? Like, do you see this?
It's hard not to see it.
Back in 2008. Like, you look old too, man.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. And wiser. Right.
Believe it or not, awesome. I feel younger than ever.
That's awesome.
So, but for you, how is this a midlife crisis for you to want to get more and more into war films? What are you talking about?
Yeah. No. So the link there with like the midlife crisis has to do with, I wish when I was 18, I would have the confidence and also the physicality to go join the Navy SEALs or join the Marines or join something like that. And so, because 2001 happened, like that happened when I was 18.
You mean 9/11?
9/11, yeah, September 11, 2001.
Yeah.
And that was really impressed on my heart because we had a trip planned for that November to go to New York, and we had that planned that whole year. Then September 11th happened, 2001, and then my parents decided, hey, we're still going to go. So we went with my cousins, and then my brother and sister, my family, and then my cousins, and had our Thanksgiving there. And we went down to Ground Zero. We could get within about 4 to 6 blocks. My memory is a little hazy with that. And man, I looked down the alley, down the line of buildings, and there's rubble. Like, I looked up at the buildings, and there was dust caked on most of the windows down the streets from when they fell. I mean,
it was a dark time.
It was. And so, yeah, from Lone Survivor to American Sniper to just, these movies that kind of come off the cusp of these, these justice seeking 18, 20-year-olds who want to get out there and defeat terrorism. That's finally coming alive in me when I'm 40.
I mean, maybe you should maybe you should like participate in a triathlon or something first, but those Iron Man type of activities. No, but that's great. It's nice to see that those kinds of films are resonating with you right now. Let's talk about specifically this one, The Covenant.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the first thing I want to bring up is the relationship between the two main characters, John Kinlev. I thought I think it's Kinlev. I could be wrong, but when I looked it up, it was like I heard Kinley when I was watching the film, but when I looked up the cast and Jake Gyllenhaal and the character that he played, it said John Kinlev. Maybe it was just the way it was pronounced in the film. And then, of course, Ahmed.
Ahmed, right.
It was a great dynamic, wasn't it? It begins when the two of them meet and he says, "Don't disappoint," and turn out to be a pain in the ass.
Right.
Like there was a nice banter between the two of them.
There was.
What did you see? What did you see in their dynamic?
Right. I also like that first scene when he's like, "Call me Sergeant," and they go back and forth with like what they call each other. Trying to like one up each other, right?
Yeah.
And so, their dynamic. I'm thinking of the word like survival. Like when they go into survival mode, right? When all hell breaks loose at that mining facility or whatever that was, that mining factory, like they're in survival mode, and man, that just makes a bond between them. Like it's powerful.
And an unspoken bond. Like
right.
it's just sort of like, and you see this all throughout their dynamic. They don't actually have to verbally express how close they are to one another and how much they love each other. It's oftentimes just a head nod.
Right. Yeah, you see that at the end, definitely.
Yeah.
And you see that dynamic actually before all hell breaks loose, when they find that first terrorist that they have like up against a wall, and Jake Gyllenhaal's in the car, right, shining the lights, and Ahmed is interpreting, right? And they could tell that something's going. You could tell that Kinlev wants to like protect Ahmed in a way, but because of the things that the terrorist is saying to him, like, I'll kill you, I'll kill your family, I'll kill them in front of you, right?
That's awful.
Like Kinlev knows like something's going on here, right? And this guy's like really risking his life. And basically, to me, like, once we're out of here, he needs to be out of here, which is the promise that we gave them, right?
Yes.
And then that doesn't work out. But yeah, so that survival mode was really powerful to me, how they bonded through that. Yeah, just the head nods, the sacrifice, like when he, Jake Gyllenhaal gets knocked out, right? Should I call him Kinlev? Kinlev gets knocked out, right? And then Ahmed kills those men, right? And then it's like, all right, we're on the run now. Yeah. We're on the run and we're surviving. And then like that's where the spiritual part to me was powerful, when it comes to like Ahmed was clearly as shrewd as a serpent and simple as a dove. Like the way he hides Kinlev in the rugs, on the cart, right? And then how simple he is with like connecting with the opiate dudes who like had the drugs to lessen his to relieve his pain, Kinlev's pain,
Yeah.
And so Ahmed could have abandoned him at any time,
Sure.
Just freaking leave him and run for the hills and get back to Bagram Air Force Base,
He could have, yeah. There was a one might say there was a covenant between them.
Well, hence the title. I think you're right.
Yes. It was interesting how this movie handled death. They really took time to name all of the soldiers in the beginning.
Yeah.
And these are soldiers that die. This is a Guy Ritchie film, and it's interesting. It's not a typical film for him, which they have violence, but they tend to be a little bit lighter and there's a little bit more of a smirk to the films. This was pretty raw. But death to me was interesting because they name the soldiers, and then there isn't actually that much time to mourn them.
Yeah.
Right. They die. And maybe you can look at that as, well, he had enough to worry about. They died and he was on the run immediately, and he goes from there consciously. He's on the run. He gets shot. Next thing you know, he's home from his perspective, and he has to worry about rescuing Ahmed. So maybe you could say, well, he didn't even have time to mourn the loss of his soldiers. You could also argue this was his fourth tour. He had probably become relatively, no one's ever comfortable with death, but maybe habituated to it.
Desensitized.
Desensitized, yeah. I thought one of the best scenes, underrated and very subtle, was when after his fellow soldiers were killed and he's sitting there and they stop for the first time after being on the run, and he looks away from Ahmed, and you see all this anguish on his face. And Ahmed, I love that he didn't say anything, but kept trying to. He kept trying to. He was like, you could see it. It was great acting. It's like, I want to express condolences, but I don't even know how to. I can't imagine what you just went through. There's a lot of empathy from Ahmed's character. And then he sort of goes through his own process himself, and then it's time to survive again. And he turns around and is like, we'll sleep here tonight, and this is what we need to do. So the relationship to death and mourning is interesting in the film.
Yeah, definitely. And right after that, there's humor because they sleep for however long. And then Kinley wakes him up and says, we have 2 minutes. And there's a 24-pack. I think he says like there's a 24-pack of beer that way. And we need to go that way. And so get your ass up.
I think he said there's 2 Taliban right on the ridge coming towards us.
Right.
Are you good? Yeah. And then he goes, are you good?
Yeah.
And Ahmed goes, I'm good. And then they go.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, the creeping through the wild there is just terrifying.
Yeah,
it's terrifying. It's not, at least for Kinley, it's not his native countryside,
right?
And so he's behind enemy lines in the actual sense, and you don't want to make any noise,
right? And he's in a terrible tactical position because he's below the cliffs, so Taliban are like above him, and he's in this narrow strait that they're trying to work their way through.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. And they have to engage in the beginning in this silent killing.
Right.
They're not going to shoot their guns. They slit throats and choke people out, and that's terrible.
Right.
I mean, I think one of the main points of the film, one of the main themes, and this is, I don't know, you were mentioning 9/11 earlier in our discussion, and I mean, I'm even thinking about contemporary issues of Arab-Israeli conflict going on in Israel right now. But I think one of the themes of this film is to separate Islamic extremist terrorists from the Afghani people, and to not lump them into one thing. It's almost like an anti-racist film. And you see, I think it's explicit at times. You see the Afghani, that one Afghani man who's actually an opioid dealer, but he said, I'm not one of those murderers, when they're checking to see if they're Taliban, right? And then all throughout the film, you have this differentiation between people trying to live their life and the Taliban, and even demonstrates how the regular citizens suffered as a result of Taliban interaction, and so that was clearly a major theme.
Right. Well, and even at the end, there's almost a halfway political statement, but definitely a statement about, like, once the Taliban took over a couple years ago, once we left, like, there's been over 300 of these interpreters that have been killed.
It was a political statement. And so, I was going to ask you about that too. I mean, it was almost an anti-Biden statement. Like, it was an anti-liberal statement. It would seem.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where, Ahmed's softness, like his determination, coupled with, you could tell he's a father and he's about to have a baby, right? So he's doing everything he can that's probably why he took Kinley with him, is because he wants to do everything he can to be on that United States side, right? In order to get the heck out of there and get a visa and be gone.
I'd also like to think that he was just a virtuous man. On that point, there was that very important scene with him holding the wheelbarrow, and he couldn't get it up the mountainside, and he has this emotional crisis for a minute. That's fantastic acting, and he's just losing his mind. But then he pulls it together, and he gets the wheelbarrow out of the rut, and I think that says something about their bond.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you pointed out both of those scenes. Think about it. Like, at first it was Kinley, where they were running down the hill, and then they take a break, and then he turns away. Kinley turns away and has all that emotion, right? And then it switches over to where Ahmed is doing his thing and incredibly frustrated going up this hill and sacrificing everything. Had to be thirsty and starving, right? And so then that emotional moment, like, you see it with him.
Yeah, it's incredible. And then it's almost as if the film was broken up into two parts. You know, I think I was assuming watching it that the whole film, the remainder of the film, would be about, well, maybe even three parts. The beginning was all about the experience of the interpreter and trying to find the IEDs, and then there was this new phase of we're on the run, and that seemed like a major shift. And I just assumed the rest of the film was going to be about being on the run, but then boom, they get to safety. The American soldiers show up, and now I look, and I still have an hour left in the film. I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't know where we were going with this, but then you shift it back home,
right?
And he's trying to get Ahmed out of Afghanistan,
right?
And he can't get the visas, and all the frustration of the bureaucracy
Right.
and all the trauma he has and the debt that he owes. What are your impressions of that second half of the movie?
Yeah. So I felt like it turned from survival mode then into mission, because that gave Kinlev like a serious mission. And once that clicked, where I was like, there's still a lot of the movie left, then I was thinking like, okay, he's going to be going badass, and he's going to be going back there, and he's probably going to be solo. Like, I've seen a lot of these movies, and I know how it goes. Like, and
That's
so
what
he
his
gets
friend says, right? This is
right.
only going to end one way. We both know how
Right.
this is going to
We
end.
both know
Yeah.
how this is going to end. Exactly. I thought it got a little dramatized with like he's laying in bed and he's like, I'm a man of no rest or something. Like a lot of his emotions got, I feel like that part got dragged out a little bit too much, but it gave a mission. It's like, this man sacrificed his whole life for me. There's no way I can just stay home while he's on the run. You know, they had that bond, right?
Yeah. Well, you had Gyllenhaal's Oscar moment where he goes to the colonel in the office and he says, "This kind of debt demands a result." Is that long speech? This is not appeasement. This is not PTSD associated with the loss of a fellow soldier. You don't go through the normal channels here. I get what the normal channels are. This is a debt. I have no choice. I need to go get him, and I need the visas and get it done. And I'm pulling the "you owe me" card on the colonel, and I know that you're a man of your word, and so you're going to get me those visas. And he just like powers through the bureaucracy.
Right. I don't know how often that actually happens, but
probably not often.
But so pretty dramatized. But he left. If you notice, Kinlev left before he even had the visas.
Yes,
like, I'm going to get him, and then you're going to figure out the visas, and I'm going now. And so then there's this little interaction between he and his wife, where his wife's just at a total helpless, like she knows what he needs to do as well. And I'm glad that actually didn't get too dramatized out. You don't really get to know his wife at all, but you do see like her anguish and her pain in allowing him to go.
Well, she's ride or die, isn't she? I long ago committed to this relationship knowing full well what that might mean. But we thought you were dead for 2 weeks. And being your wife is different than being a mother of these kids. And you have now put me in an impossible position.
Right.
So if you're going and I'm backing you up, you're coming home. You better come home. I will see you when you come home. But go. But she's ride or die. I know you have to do this. I mean, what a devoted wife who understands the mission of her husband. I thought it was really beautiful. And then it just the anguish that I feel when seeing those kids.
Saying goodbye to their daddy.
That's so heartbreaking. At that point, you don't know if he's coming back alive when you first see the film.
Right.
It's just crushing.
You know, my wife is so good at that. When I get to a point of empathy fatigue and I got a break coming up, or struggles at work or something like that, like she's just really good at like this tension between compassion, but then also calling me on like, Michael, your break is in a week, and you're going to go and you're going to keep seeing these clients, and you're going to keep doing your thing. Like, get up and go.
That's cool.
And I know, like, she's like, I see it in your eyes when you come home. Like, sometimes you are drained and you are done. Because the other military piece to this is like, I feel like we breach doors with our clients all the time. I mean, Bryan, like, we don't know what we're walking into a lot. And a lot of times on the intake paperwork, it's like anxiety, depression, right? They sit down in front of you 3 sessions later, it's sexual abuse, dad abandoned them, and mom was whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so like you're breaking through these doors of their heart where it's like, I don't know what I'm going to find behind this. The pain, the vulnerability there, right?
The
it's
wreckage.
Scary. Yeah,
the wreckage of people's lives that we are willfully choosing to enter into out of love, and that's the mission, and that's what these soldiers. I mean, they were inspired to do the right thing, and they committed themselves to a mission despite the danger for themselves, and They're not thinking about themselves. And I think that's what a good clinician has to consider. I think that has to be the approach. I mean, our work is hard work. It's really hard, but you don't think about that. You just think of caring about other people and those that you love, and that's what drives the soldier and the clinician. Not to compare the two, but interiorly, there is a parallel in the dynamic between the two.
Yes, definitely. You know, I wanted to also ask you about the final scene or maybe you're walking up to that. You're doing a great job of drawing out the movie and just like what it was about. But when they finally get Ahmed, right, and then they're on that bridge, and just huge gunfight going on, right?
Yeah,
and right, and then I didn't know there was that kind of technology with that. What is that? An A10?
That air gun.
That air gun. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. And to see what was interesting to me about that scene was the contrast between the wreckage and the damage that air gun was causing on the ground, and then they would flash to the gunner in the plane who's just gently sitting in silence, and he's just pressing a button quietly,
right,
and looking at a screen.
Right. Huh.
I mean, to me, it's a little bit terrifying. Like the disconnect between those two is a little terrifying in terms of where technology is now. You think about the damage that drones can do, and it becomes impersonal in a way. Right. Like you think about medieval combat, it's very personal to cut someone down with a sword. Yep. Sitting. This wasn't the case in this movie, but sitting in the United States and firing a drone overseas becomes very impersonal project,
Yes.
So that's what struck me. On the ground itself, I mean, it was just awful. It was terrible. I kept thinking about those kids, and I thought, well, maybe this film ends artistically with them dying together. And then it pans to Ahmed, and his hand is shaking. That's the first time you saw real weakness in him. And I mean, you can understand his wife and his child are crying right behind him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then I was a little confused because the truck comes down the bridge and it had Taliban flags. I'm like, oh no, like, what is this? And then that Parker guy pops out.
Right. Right. It was a contractor. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was Taliban at first too.
Yeah. And then there was a great exchange, and he was like, if I knew who you were, this would have been on the house.
Right. Right. Why don't you just tell me who you were? Because at first he didn't give him his full platoon. He's like, they have another job the contractor's like, we have another job to do, like in 3 days. Can't you just wait 3 days? And Kinley was like, no, I'm going now.
Yeah. If I were you, I'd wait. He said, well, you're not me.
Yeah. Right. You're not me. What, did you just watch this last night, or did you just watch this at noon today?
No, I saw it a few days back, but I mean,
you did?
That line stuck out to me because it seems to me that they really paint the main character as a hero, almost like a Batman or a Superman, or like there's something unique that sets him apart. You're not me. And it just struck me. It just came to my mind. But I mean, it was a good film. The bond, the pledge, the commitment between the two of them, and what drives them to sacrifice and suffer for one another. I mean, that is a very Christian message.
Yeah.
My hope that your emotional crisis, midlife crisis, has been resolved through this discussion as you explore how there's a part of you that's breaking down doors out of love for other people, just like the soldiers in this film.
There is. That was the breakthrough moment for me, where it's like, I'm doing that in a way with clients as well, where there's, like you said, there's the same spirit to that. And, I think someone like Sam Blair, who is ex-Navy SEAL, who's on Restore the Glory podcast, I think he would definitely agree with that, with like the spirit of like the sacrifice and what we give to our clients is very much there, and breaching doors with them,
Yeah, these are masculine themes. And in a film like this, those masculine themes are overt. But it is the call for every single man to live interiorly in that same spirit, whether that's on the battle, like the battlefield changes for each man, but that doesn't mean we don't want to fight and we're not called to fight. We're all going to be exposed to those moments of fear, and only love, I think, will carry us to do the courageous thing for others. So it was a great movie. Good pick.
Thanks, man. Yeah.